got it there. So it's recording now. Okay, guys.
Thank you.
So yeah, with that first video, we're going to have to just put that onto the actual Google Classroom later, so that you guys can watch Miss Martinez's video. Because sadly, I've been a fool and I've not recorded the webinar before this point, so we've missed the first 10 minutes. Sorry to anyone who's just joined in. Now, Miss, is there any other questions regarding your video before I move on?
Let me check. No, it's just the same. Yeah, I think you answered all of it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so I've got this short video here, and this is going to display to you, hopefully, some of the trials and tribulations of science and completing a science practical. So we're going to see if this plays for you. And I can... Oh, hold on. 200 milliliters of vinegar into the pot. So first of all, obviously, I need to measure out 200 milliliters of vinegar. I do this with my one hand. As you can see here, on my container, it says 200 ml. If you don't have a measuring jug like this, try and get yourself just a normal plastic cup, and they'll be around that volume anyway. So we're going to have 200 ml of vinegar in here. I see I've got enough vinegar in this little jar. It's quite a lot, as you can see. So I'm just short, and I have to use the backup vinegar. Right, 1 second. Open the lid. Boom. So let's top this up. More precise pouring here. 2 mils. As you can see, I'm using white vinegar. So that's 200 mils there, not 2 mils. I'm saying 200 mils of white vinegar. Distilled vinegar, just to try and avoid any other impurities. A whole cup worth of vinegar in here, quite a lot. See. Then, tablespoon. So you sprinkle 1 tablespoon of baking soda into the pot. So I've got my tablespoon here, eating spoon. And then we're going to put 1 tablespoon of this. Don't mind if you go a bit over in terms of the amount, but if you get more, slightly more, slightly less. Right, pop this into here, and a little bit under the split. So as you can see, a little bit of a reaction. You chuck it all in at once, then you just get a little bit of an overflow. Okay, sprinkle it in, just like that, and we can see an effervescence. So I do apologise to any parents at this moment, because as it's vinegar and we're getting a large release of gas here, you're going to smell a lot of that vinegar. So in a moment, just stop effervescing, letting off gas. Body will slow down. Okay, step 3. Now what we're going to do is, with this slowly mixed solution of the vinegar and the sodium, baking soda, we're making the So I could really just stop here and explain that this is a neutralization reaction, which is going to produce also a salt, some carbon dioxide, and some water. So we are, as I'm saying here, about to boil off the water. So what we need to do now, after this neutralization reaction has occurred, we need to boil off the water that's over here, and it will leave us with the crystal. So we're going to turn on the heat, which I'm going to do. Okay, as I said, we're turning on the heat, and we're going to heat it up a little bit more to begin with. As you can see, I put it on one of the smallest stoves, and we're going to allow that to bubble a little bit, and then we're going to turn it down. Okay, we can allow that to gently heat, evaporating off the water for a short while. Okay, so the short while turned out to be about 30 minutes. Now, as I've shown you, you're going to be using a hob for both of the practicals that I've made. So it's really, really important to make it very clear at this point, you should not be doing this unless you have supervision from an adult. In this instance, because it's a flame hob rather than an element hob, it's really important that any flames that are on are being under careful supervision, so that you're not leaving the stove side during that 30 minutes. Okay, you're keeping an eye on it, making sure that it's working properly. Okay, so now after a good 45 minutes, and it's very low heating there, you can see that most of that water has evaporated off. So we're left with some of these sodium acetate crystals here. And I'm just going to give that just another sort of minute or so, trying to collect up all the rubbish. We're trying to dry out all these crystals here and really get rid of the water. Okay, so step 5. And we scrape all the crystals, got them into here, as I said in step 4, and we've got a small amount of crystals over there on the table. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pour 50 millilitres of boiling water into our measuring container here, and we're actually going to pour this back into the pot so that we are going to redissolve the sodium acetate crystals. We're going to pour those in as well. So I'm getting from the side of the pot, some of them might have hit up the side of your pot as it was evaporating, and we're just going to stir that in, try and make sure that all of those crystals are dissolved in there. As well, and it's redissolved in boiling water fairly quickly. As well, then what we're going to do is we're going to carefully making sure that we don't get any of the liquid near our hands, and carefully just pour this into the container. We've got the sodium acetate in water in our jar here. And then we're going to just whack this back into the freezer for about 40 minutes. There we go. Okay, so let me just quickly point out that that solution was fairly clear, and that's what you want to get from it to have successful results. See how mine goes in a moment. So the final step. There's a few ways you can do this. Okay, a couple of ways. There's one in which you can drip the liquid on top of the crystals here, and you can try and make a sort of pillar of crystals. But we're going to try a more simplified method to begin with. So we're just going to collect a small amount of powder on my finger, and we're going to poke this into the jar. The first thing is to remove the jar from the freezer. We get this out here, and it's in there. It's not frozen, as you can see. It's still liquid. But we're trying not to aggravate it too much, because otherwise it might start the reaction before we want it to. So we're going to try and turn that bit there into a sort of warm ice. Oh no, I've got a problem now. Finger didn't reach in. So with the tip of a spoon instead. We're going to see if this, we can get this to spoon here, and again and get it close to our eyes. And nothing happened. Nothing happened in the first instance. So I carried on, and I was trying a few different methods. So we can see now. Yeah. Okay, so in the method that I saw, they used the drip method to allow small amounts into the crystals, and it took them a long time to get that reaction going there. Now, as you can see from my experiment, in this instance, it hasn't worked. In the past, I have got it to work, but something to do with the proportions, the amounts of baking soda, that I added, something to do with the amount of time perhaps in the pan, meant that I wasn't actually able to get a hot ice solidification. What you should have seen is something similar to this reaction, where we can see as soon as the finger is placed into the sodium acetate in aqueous, it starts that quick reaction reaction sending out the sort of crystals in the solution itself. Okay, so this is the reaction that I was hoping for. One of the major issues I had, obviously, was the fact that my jar was too large for the volume of liquid. So I actually used a smaller jar in the next attempt. However, it still didn't work. Now, I've tried it a few times to the point where I've run out of the vinegar. So my final conclusion as to why it may not have worked for me is because I actually scraped up all of the crystals from the bottom of the pan and I redissolved those back into the liquid. Now, the reason why that might have caused a problem is because there would have been impurities on the bottom of the pan from where I've used it for cooking. So we may have had some food residue or some other residue of other chemicals. So that meant that the solution was not sodium acetate when I put it into the freezer. So a better sort of way around that could be to collect some of the crystals from the pan and then redissolve them in a separate bowl. What I would like you guys to do is to have a go at this and to see if you can get any successful results from it. Now, as a sort of ending to my poor, results, I actually decided to record a final video, which I'll see if I can get for you now, which is a separate thing for you guys to do. Also partly showing my descent into madness, as you can see from my movement around the kitchen. A bit of vinegar in the plate there. Sorry about the remnants of my lunch there. I feel like I should have put this on mute because of the humming. Okay. This could be a commentary on my previous practical. And so I've left it to dry for a bit. I'm going to zoom in because it does go for a while. Where are we? Let's go up to this point here. It didn't work. There you go. It didn't work. Right. So instead, I thought I'd show you how to do invisible ink. So we get a little pool of vinegar. You can do it with lemon juice. You can do it with pretty much any chemical, to be honest. Yeah, any chemical that is not flammable. So basically, just stick to vinegar or lemon juice is the best two options. White vinegar is best because it's clear, transparent, doesn't show up on the page. Using a chopstick with my writing instrument, and just write what you like. Let's go. Yeah, so also use paper. You can use any sort of paper. Don't use a card or any glossy paper or anything like that because it won't work. The best paper would be normal A4 printing paper. But I didn't have any of that at home, so I used the paper from a notebook. Obviously, you can see it's not very thick. Okay, so I'm not using paper from like an art book, for example. I'm going to just use finished paper, and I'll talk you through the flame set in the section. Visible on the page when you first write it there. You can see that that's why this one didn't work so well, because it wasn't particularly wet with vinegar when I first did it. And I'm just going to leave that for a little while. Basically, just leave it until it dries, and then when you return, I'm going to actually bring you back to this part where I started to heat on the stove here, because what you'll see is that actually I'm using the smallest stove. So that's the smallest one of these discs on my oven, and I've got it on the lowest possible heat. And as you can see, when I'm actually heating the paper, I'm never leaving it stationary. I'm never putting it still over the flame, because that will catch fire. I'm never also touching the edge of the paper, because that will also catch fire. So you've got to gently just move it over the heat and allow it to actually basically slightly singe the back of the paper. So you're allowing it to slightly singe it. Now, again, any use of the oven, any use of your stove needs to be under parental supervision. So this is really important that you guys aren't doing this on your own, because it can or could set fire. Now, in the instance of that actually happening, as a brief control, the first thing that you should probably do, or the first thing you should do, is to put the paper straight into the sink, okay? Because the sink is obviously a wet, contained area which is not going to set on fire. If you do accidentally set your piece of paper on fire, place it straight away into the sink, okay? My best advice to avoid doing that, though, is that you can actually also use a light bulb to gently warm the paper, okay? Secondarily, though, you do not want to use a light bulb in your living room, because otherwise, if you accidentally burn that or singe that in your living room, you're not near anywhere where you can place that burning piece of paper. Hence, why it's best to do it in the kitchen or outside. Okay, so that is the end of the invisible ink and the dry ice, which I'm hot ice even, which I'm terribly sorry
Sir,
work properly for you, Miss.
hello. Sorry to interrupt you. There is a question about that actually. Will it work with an electric hob?
Good question. So with an electric hob, it actually, yes, it's usually better. So first, make sure that your ink is completely dry, and then with the electric hob, still moving it around the hob. So you're not leaving it stationary on the hob, but you just place it above the electric hob, just gently move it around over where you've written the writing, and it will slowly take effect, and it will slowly start to get that singeing effect on the bottom of it as well. But good question.
Right, I got one more about that. Will it be best to have bowl of a bucket of water ready to put the paper in case it catches fire?
That is a very good idea as well. Depends on how close your sink is to the oven there. If your sink's very close to it, I'd say just use the sink. But if you have an oven on the other side of the room, then yeah, I would get yourself a little basin of water if you can, or even a bowl that you can just plop the paper in if it starts to set alight. Good idea though.
Good idea, yeah?
Yeah, that's good. We like those sort of additions to the hazards and the controls.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions there at all, Miss?
There's one about before, the one with the vinegar.
Yeah.
It has to be white vinegar, or can it be any?
So it's supposed to be white vinegar, purely because I think it has it's got less impurities in it. However, I mean, if you try it with vinegar, and it works, then that'd be amazing. So what I'm actually looking from that, guys, is that I've tried it 3 times, and I didn't manage to get a clear result from it. In one of them, I did get a little bit of precipitate forming, which means solid forming, where I was placing my finger in. But it still didn't create that hot ice effect. I didn't feel any temperature change. And I think sometimes, as I said, using equipment from the kitchen can be quite difficult to avoid those impurities. Any other questions at all?
Actually, something just to add it to about the electrical induction. There's a question here, and one of the students say, "Hi Tess, my dad says it won't work on an electric induction hob unless you put something like a frying pan on the ring first."
Oh, on an induction hob, yeah, it won't.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah. Yeah, they need to pick up through the pans, don't they, themselves?
Induction, that'll be tricky, yeah.
Yeah. Instead of using that, though, you can use a match outside, for example. And as I said, one of the best options can also just be to use a lamp. So if you get a lamp with a normal filament bulb in it,
then you can use that lamp to gently heat the paper. As I said, again, make sure that you're moving it. Don't ever just leave it stationary, because otherwise it will heat up one spot too much. But a lamp with a filament bulb can also work. Sadly, those of you who are doing the good thing and getting the energy saving bulbs, they won't really work. So you need to get a filament bulb for that one.
Or maybe like a tea light would work.
A tea light's fine, yeah, or a lighter as well.
Yeah.
You know, anything with a little bit of flame is fine. Just make sure that if you are using any flame, that yeah, you're doing it in the kitchen by the sink would be great if you're doing it with a match or anything like that. But if you can't do that, then perhaps outside somewhere, if you have the availability to do that as well. Okay.
Right, no more questions here, sir?
Cool. That's great. So guys, the video will be available to you on the Google Classroom and via email. And we are going to get the recording up as soon as possible so that you guys can have a watch and re-watch those. There'll also be a couple of the websites available in case you guys just want to use the websites methods from the experiments that we've done. So thank you very much again for joining us today, guys. Input all of your videos and photos to the corresponding Google Classrooms, and have a fantastic summer when you get to it. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks, Miss. See you later.
Thanks, sir. See you later.